If you get pulled over for a DUI, the first thing that you should realize is your level or state of sobriety. If you know for sure that you are sober, maybe you've had a drink over a span of a couple of hours, and you know for sure that you're going to pass any kind of blood alcohol related test, these suggestions don't necessarily apply to you. If you get pulled over for a DUI, I tell my clients the first and most important thing is to be smart. Realize that as those lights are flashing behind you that the officers are watching your every move. Keep your hands on the steering wheel in the 10 and 2 position. Try not to make any furtive movements in the car, such as grabbing for the glove box. When the officers see you do things like that, they might think that you're either trying to hide some kind of contraband or maybe grabbing for a weapon or something like that. Don't talk more than you need to. The officer is going to ask you several questions regarding how much you drank, where you were, and things like that. The only thing that you really need to respond to is you need to present your driver's license and proof of registration, and also proof of insurance if asked. Any questions that you do respond to can and probably will be used against you. Try to avoid answering the questions without being too rude. One thing that I would tell my clients to say is simply say something like, I was told by my attorney friend not to answer these questions and I choose not to. And that's something that you definitely want to avoid doing, is offending the officer. Refuse any and all field sobriety tests. A lot of people don't realize that field sobriety tests such as the finger to nose test, reciting the ABCs, counting to 100, things like that, walking the straight line. These field sobriety tests are all voluntary. The only time you'll see the results of these tests if they're going to be used against you to show your state of intoxication after you are pulled over. So I would advise to, unless you're completely sober and unless you did not have anything to drink, avoid any and all field sobriety tests. If you refuse to submit to the field sobriety test, do so in a manner, again, that is not going to offend the arresting officer. What would most likely happen in that situation is the officer will ask you to submit to the preliminary alcohol screening. If you refuse to take a preliminary alcohol screening test at the scene of the stop, expect to be taken to jail. And that's when you will be asked to take an actual breathalyzer test where the results are going to be more accurate, but because there is only going to be one set of results rather than two to compare it to, that leaves it open for a lot of arguments that we could use later on to help you in your case. One thing with all California licensed driver, there is what's called an implied consent law. And what that means is that every driver is impliedly consenting to take either a blood alcohol content test by way of a urine sample or a breath sample. Now you're required to take one of these two tests anytime you're stopped for a DUI. Differentiate that from the preliminary alcohol screening, which is something that the officer may ask you to take at the scene of the stop. These tests are actually conducted either at a hospital or at the police station. So you will definitely have a choice of at least a breathalyzer test or a blood test. These are the two choices that you're absolutely entitled to. There are situations where maybe the blood test isn't available or the means to conduct a blood test aren't available. In that situation, you must take the breath test. From that point on, the results of your breathalyzer test should become pretty quickly available. If your results fall at 0.08 or higher, you're likely to become arrested, and you will be officially booked. They'll read your rights, and you'll likely be placed in a holding cell for you to sober up. And at this time, you have the option of posting bail if you'd like, but most likely what will happen is you'll be released on your own recognizance either later that day or the following morning.